Hello, everyone, and welcome on into another episode of Chop It Up. Got a good one for you guys today. Once again, wild week of college football. We're in the prime of the baseball postseason. That's been a lot of fun, especially if you're a Mariners fan, which I have become in the last week. And we got our dude of the week to wrap up the show. So we have another fun one for you guys today. Before we get into our content, we just want to tell you guys to like the video, subscribe, and hit your notification button. That way you get updates when we record. We're also on Instagram and TikTok, so if you want to see predictions and shorter clips and previews from throughout the week, you can go find more content from us on there as well, as we have new camera equipment and new mics and all that good stuff. We're going to start producing more content, so be sure to go check us out on all the social media. Full episodes, Spotify, YouTube. Shorter clips and content is going to be on Instagram and TikTok, and that's at Chop It Up Sports. So be sure to go find us there, and we appreciate it. Hunter, let's get into it. Week 7 of college football. That's insane that we're already at the halfway point. We did pretty good on the picks this week. Starting off in the SEC, Alabama got a dub for us. We split on Red River. You got me there. But then I got my revenge with my hate pick, Indiana coming up clutch, knocking off your Ducks. Ohio State took care of business like we thought they would. And then we split on USC, who looked really, really good against Michigan. I was shocked by that.
So we're about 3-2. 3-2 with our picks this week.
I think I'm 4-1.
All right. I think this week of college football just proved once again we don't really know anything yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things are still getting shaken up every week, and the more we know, the more we're told that we don't know. So.
Yeah, it feels like after each and every week, I just have been like in my mind kind of reviewing what has happened and what it means. And then I just get to the point where I'm like, all right, I still don't really know who's good and who's not. So we're still figuring it out. Let's talk about some teams who are good, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide. Big win on the road this weekend, very competitive game. I thought Alabama was the better team in this one, but Missouri actually showed me that despite some turnovers, despite Bo Pribula throwing 2 interceptions, they're actually a pretty high-quality team. And I thought that this showed Missouri can make a run for the playoff if things go their way, but it also showed that Alabama can win in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this game came down to big plays. I think it was very competitive throughout. Both defensive lines played pretty well. Both teams trying to work off the play action, resulting in some sacks, different things like that. And eventually it just came down to those plays where it's like, all right, which way is the ball going to roll, right? And I think more often than not, it happened to roll in Alabama's favor, and I think Alabama is the better team. But like you said, I think it's just a competitive game, well played all around. I know Bo Pribula. I know that's not how you say his name. I'm not very good at pronouncing last names, but I know he had 2 interceptions. But if you really look back at the film, he had a great game. That last one obviously sort of ended their chances, but ultimately I think it was great play from both teams.
2 things stood out to me in this game. And, when you're a team like Missouri, we talked about in our previews, they run the ball better than almost anyone in the country. I think they rank 5th in rushing offense across all of FBS. So when you face a team like that, and Pribula can run as well, he's very mobile, you're going to see teams like that who they control the clock, they establish the run early and often. And Alabama kind of turned into the Alabama defense of old back when Nick Saban was there, where, they had 38 minutes of possession. They dominated the offensive side of the football. Missouri, on the other hand, only had the ball for 22 minutes. Also to go along with that, Missouri puts up almost 300 rushing yards per game. Alabama almost cut that in half. They only gave up about 170, I thought. So it was a strong performance by this Alabama defense. Missouri's still going to score points. Their offense is very talented, and so with that is going to come points on the scoreboard. But despite that, Ty Simpson in high-pressure situations, I think he had 3 touchdowns, no picks, just really clean football. We were watching here in our apartment, and at the end of the 4th quarter, Bama decided to go for it.
4th and 8.
Pretty bold move, and they ended up getting it. Absolute dot. This is probably the best throw I saw by anyone all weekend. Rolling out to his left, he's got a receiver who's smothered, and he just layers the ball right over the DB as his receiver's going out of bounds. Pretty much won him the game from that point.
Yeah, I agree. Ty Simpson is playing great. I think if you're an Alabama fan, you should have a lot of confidence in this kid. I was looking back at the first half. 3rd and 8, on their opening drive, he completes a throw outside of the pocket, right? That gives them a bunch of momentum. They go on to score a touchdown. And then later, he hit that seam route over the top for another touchdown, and that's on a 3rd and 12 play. So this kid is making plays when it matters most. And so I think as an Alabama team that's really looking to, make a statement in the playoffs, I know they're a ways away and they have a tough SEC schedule, but as a team that's really trying, to win a national championship, to be honest, I think if you're a fan of the Crimson Tide, you should feel pretty confident with the guy you have handling the ball.
Let's move on to the Red River rivalry. Say that 3 times fast. Texas, man, they turned things around.
They did.
Their offense looks a little better. They're taking care of the ball. Arch was not jumping off the screen, but he played good quality football, and he took care of the football, which is one of the biggest problems he's had against a really, really good Oklahoma defense. Now, in Oklahoma's defense, their offense was terrible. Mateer, 3 interceptions. I don't know if it was the hand injury. I don't know if it was just trying to knock off the rust and you throw them into probably one of the biggest games of the season for Oklahoma. And for whatever reason, they can't run the ball. And they've had this problem. They brought in Jaden Ott from Cal, who was one of the best running backs in the country over the last couple seasons. And they just, 1, they don't give it to him, and 2, they just can't run the ball with anyone. Obviously, Mateer's really mobile, but their offensive line was exposed, I thought, and ultimately that resulted in not only a poor passing performance, but them not running the ball at all. I think they had, 75 yards rushing in total? So not a good performance, but from Oklahoma, I actually have real concerns about them. I think they're in trouble, especially when you look at their schedule. But Texas, man, I think the famous chant they have is Texas fight, and Texas fought.
Yeah, and I going back to the hurt hand thing, I think really ultimately it came down to a poor run game and then a collapsed pocket, majority of the game. I think that really explains the poor passing performance from Mateer. And so I think that is reason for concern if you're an Oklahoma fan, like you were saying, because I don't think it comes down to, those things that are up to chance, like injury and things like that. I think they have serious, issues when they face a tough defensive front that Texas had. And then obviously if they can't run the ball, it puts all that much more pressure on their quarterback. And I know John Mateer's great, but it's just not a sustainable way to win. Their defense is good. Like, you know what I mean? Outside of a special teams touchdown, they only give up 16 points, right? So they can still rely on their defense, but the offense has to be more balanced moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at Oklahoma, they start the year off so hot, right? They have that big win against Michigan. They have that big win at home against Auburn as well. And so when you have a team that has so much hype around them and a brand new quarterback and things are all really exciting, now it seems like things are kind of going down the drain for them because the end of their season is going to be an absolute bloodbath. I'm pulling up the Oklahoma Sooners football schedule for the rest of this season. Right now they dropped to number 14th in the country with 6 games left to be played. This is their schedule. On the road at South Carolina, they'll win that.
Tough.
Ole Miss at home. Then they go to Neyland Stadium and play Tennessee.
Tough.
On the road in Tuscaloosa. Then they host Missouri, who we just talked about. Really good team.
Balance.
And then they end the year, LSU goes to Norman. So they could, I don't think they will. They could legitimately go 1-5 to end the season. And if that happens, I'm not going to be shocked. But the reason I bring that up is because Brent Venables, this is finally the first year where he's felt like he's turned a corner with this Oklahoma program after the departure of Lincoln Riley. And despite this great start to the regular season, things could get dark really, really fast. And so I guess for the question for you would be, where does Oklahoma go from there? Or from here, how do you think they finish the season? Like, what do things look like for them? Because this weekend was really, really concerning.
Yeah, I do want to be careful with the tone that we're using, surrounding the Oklahoma football team, because I still think they're a very good football team. Like I said, that defense is tough, and then Mateer's a great quarterback. But like you're saying, it's just tough. It's a tough situation to be in because you are a really good football team, but you clearly have some holes, and you have holes in a very, very tough SEC schedule. You know what I mean? Sorry, let me rephrase it. They have holes, and they have a very tough SEC schedule coming up. And so even being a great football team, if you can't shore some of those things up, that schedule will eat you up. And so, yeah, like I said, I think things could get messy, like you were saying.
Let's change our focus to Texas for a little bit here because this was a big win for them. Arch needed this. Sark needed this. It just kind of seemed like a balanced attack. Obviously, they had the punt return. That's huge when your special teams comes up big. But besides that, I mean, this team was ranked number 3 in the country to start the season.
Yeah.
And maybe they were ranked number 1. They're the preseason number 1. And then they were unranked coming into this game. Obviously, they started the season with the loss at Ohio State. They lose that game to Florida, which I know Florida's defense is good, but overall that team is not great. And so to respond the way they did in a hostile environment, neutral site game, probably the biggest game of the season for both teams just because of the hatred in that rivalry. This was a big time for Texas. And do I think they'll make the playoffs? Probably not. But I think this weekend showed that they are a team that when they play to their potential and they play well on all 3 elements of the football, offense, defense, special teams, this is a team that can go into any stadium and compete at a high level.
Yeah, I agree. The defense was nasty on Saturday. The defensive front was in the backfield all the time, and the pass coverage as well. When the defensive front didn't get to Mateer, he had no one to throw to. So we know the defense is good, but I think the big point, like you hit on, was the momentum that they built. I think this really could be a turning point, particularly because they had 2 offensive weapons that really sort of found their rhythm, right? Arch didn't play like lights out, but he did what he needed to do, and he actually extended a few plays, like got out of the pocket. He made some good runs, made some good throws to the boundaries off the run. And so I think that can only be a momentum builder for him, which is obviously extremely important. As you know, the quarterback's probably the most important player on the field. And then also Quintravion Wisner had a day in the passing game and running the ball. And I think that's really important for Texas, right? So two of your guys that you need making plays every Saturday sort of got it going against a really good defense. And so I think that could build a lot of momentum for this Texas football team heading forward.
Texas's schedule, just taking a peek at it, not as hard as Oklahoma's. I actually don't think anyone has a schedule as hard as Oklahoma does across the United States. They do have to go to Athens at the end, or I guess mid-November, and then they end the year with Texas A&M. So they still have some tough games. Vandy is in there as well. But I think based on what we saw this past weekend, they showed that they can compete with those teams. They can win those games depending on how they shake out. How do you think things end for the Horns this year?
Well, it's tough to say that they win out. I think they have a chance in all the games they play, but to beat Georgia at Georgia and then to beat Texas A&M to end your season is going to be a tall task. I think if they win out, they're probably pushing for a playoff spot. Probably guaranteed.
There's some really good wins on there if they win out.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, if you look at it, Florida's the only blemish thus far, right? Like a 14-7 loss to Ohio State is not a blemish. They didn't dominate like they should against some of those weaker opponents like San Jose State and UTEP, but I think this Texas team, should be shooting for the playoffs, to say the least. And they have a low shot of getting there. I think if they win out, they do. They drop one more, they're sort of on the edge. So I think things are looking up for Texas.
Yeah, things are still in front of them for Texas. They have to win out, but it's going to be tough regardless. Let's move on to a game that I know you don't want to talk about. You had to go up into the woods afterwards. You had to be one with nature, and this was a tough one, and I know the pain. I've been there. Indiana goes into Autzen Stadium and snaps the longest home winning streak in college football, which, by the way, at the beginning of the season, the 3 longest home winning streaks in all of college football, Georgia, Washington, Oregon. In the last 3 to 4 weeks, the last month essentially, all 3 of those have been snapped.
And Missouri was second behind Oregon.
Yeah, so now 4. And that just shows you the parity in college football now with these teams being able to go win on the road. But the Hoosiers, man, this was a somewhat dominant win. And I know the game was tied in the fourth quarter, and it seemed like Oregon was going to actually, I thought they were going to come back and win after the pick six. But for Indiana to go on the road into that environment with Fernando Mendoza, who the last time he stepped into that stadium lost 63-19, and for him to play the way he did was very impressive. Both teams who, their identity revolves a lot around running the football offensively. Both of their defenses really game planned around that, and you could see that. Indiana rushes for 270-something yards a game normally. They rushed for 111. Oregon rushed for 81 yards. And with the backfield that they have and kind of the depth that they have at the running back position, that was something that was really surprising. So Indiana gets out of there with the dub. You were very invested in this game. We both were, but obviously this is your team. So I want to get your thoughts, allow you to vent if you need to. What's kind of your takeaways from this?
Well, first you have to give Indiana their flowers. They proved me wrong. Despite being the Indiana Hoosiers, they are built physical. They have good players on the outside, both offensively and defensively. They're built to win in the Big Ten, which somewhat surprised me. Not in the sense that they weren't built to win, but I was like, can these guys really compete with the Oregons, the Ohio States, the Michigans, and the Penn States of the past? Because those teams are physical. They're grown men out there. They have good defensive fronts, big offensive linemen, and clearly Curt Cignetti has brought in the players that he needs to win. And then obviously Fernando Mendoza played well. I think Cignetti's got a good system for him. That they run a lot of RPO, so he sort of just has to make the right decision. He has a lot of different options each play, and I think he was a great decision maker on Saturday. On the other side of the ball, I was just surprised, to be honest. Oregon just couldn't find a rhythm. We didn't get shut down necessarily, but there was no rhythm to the game. We had that one big explosive play to Malik Benson on that QB rollout in the second quarter, but outside of that, very few big plays, not a lot of rhythm, always behind the sticks. And so, when you're faced with a tough team that's, has a balanced attack, it's tough to win when you're playing, sort of behind all the time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the deep ball because I was looking through the game log and kind of going back and watching the game, and I was keeping a tally of how many plays Oregon had offensively that were 15 yards or beyond, and it was few and far between. Like you said, they did have a 20-yard catch here, a 15-yard reception there. But for the most part, it was Indiana keeping things in front of them, kind of limiting the Oregon rushing attack, not really allowing those backs to get downfield. And then, like you said, besides the long bomb from Dante Moore and that busted coverage, really everything was pretty short yardage passing situations. And so I think another thing, too, on the other side of the ball for Indiana, and this credit goes to Curt Cignetti, it goes to the coaching staff. Last year, Indiana was a fun team, right? They have always been terrible, and it was a cool story. They had a pretty weak schedule. They got thumped by Ohio State, but they were able to go 11-1 and make the college football playoff, right? Mm-hmm. Then they get thumped by Notre Dame, and I think when you look at those two games with Ohio State and Notre Dame, they really got exposed up front, right? Ohio State ran the ball down their throat with Travion Henderson and Quinshot Judkins. Jeremiah Love had a field day with that Hoosiers defense. And now they went on the road to face a team that, despite having a really good quarterback in Dante Moore, also runs the ball very effectively. And so for that Indiana front seven to play the way they did, for them to have 6 sacks on Dante Moore against an offensive line that is very highly recruited, very highly touted. I mean, that whole line and really this whole Oregon roster is covered with 4-star and 5-star talent. So for Indiana to assert dominance up front the way they did, I know the stats coming into this game suggested that, but I really didn't think they'd have that sort of success against Oregon.
Yeah, it surprised me. We talked about it in our picks, actually. I knew Indiana's defensive front was good, but I also knew that our offensive line was good. That defensive front isn't just good; they're legit. They're up there with the best defensive fronts in college football. And I like that word you use. Like in college football, there's contenders, then there's sort of the fun teams, right? And the fun teams are good, but when they go up against a contender, they normally get exposed. Indiana has transitioned from a fun team to a contender. And I don't want to put them in, like, I'm not saying they're going, to the national championship. I'm just saying they can compete with the best of the best. You better show up when you play Indiana, no matter who you are.
Let's move on to a team that, speaking of teams that can't beat top-tier talent, the Penn State Nittany Lions, man. They're at the top of the headline after this weekend. They fire their head coach, James Franklin. He is gone out of Happy Valley after a 3-3 start. 16 days ago, to the day we're recording this, we were sitting in these very chairs. Penn State had the ball. They needed a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to beat the Oregon Ducks in the whiteout game at home. And what do? Drew Aller, actually, I'm not going to bash on Drew Aller. I feel very bad for him. Drew Aller throws an interception. Penn State loses. Here we are 2 weeks later. James Franklin gone. They lost to UCLA at the Rose Bowl. They lost to Northwestern. And I have my own thoughts on the firing. Obviously, Penn State's season is done. Drew Aller's out for the year now. I don't really know what his future looks like in terms of draft and stock and all that. But for starters, I just want him to get healthy. I want him to be okay. Because, things fell from the sky really fast for Penn State.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at it before. Obviously, James Franklin was fired. That's what we're ultimately getting to, if you haven't figured that out already. And I was looking at it, and it felt like in the last couple years, Penn State has sort of established a new standard, right? Like, we're competing for, national championships. Like, that's the standard. And James Franklin, I was looking at this stat. It happened to pop up on my phone earlier. He was 64-36 against Big Ten opponents, right? So at most schools, it's pretty good. That's a good in-conference record. However, with there being a new standard at Penn State, that's not reaching the standard. And so I think, it was probably time for a change. I didn't expect things to come down this quickly. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens moving forward, because this is one of the biggest crash and burns that I can think of, throughout my lifetime for a single team.
Yeah, this was insane. For them to be ranked, number 3 in the preseason, and, I thought...
it depends what poll, but yeah.
Yeah, I legit thought that they were going to win the national championship. Like, if I put money down in the preseason, it would have been on Penn State, because I thought Aller would have just taken that next step. I thought their running game with Katron Allen was going to take off. They were going to be really good defensively, all these things. And I don't really know what it was. Like, I know the Oregon game took a lot out of them emotionally. I think that was the primary reason they lost to UCLA, but then the Northwestern loss too. Like, I don't get that. And I think it shows that there was something going on behind the scenes as well.
For sure.
Within that locker room that we didn't get. This is my thoughts on the James Franklin firing. First of all, I don't know where Penn State really gets this notion that it's national championship or bust for Penn State. They won 2 national championships in 1982 and 1986. And so James Franklin took this program literally from the dirt and built it into a national championship contender. Now, I say contender because they never won the games they had to in order to make it to the national championship. But despite that, constant 10-2, 11-1 seasons out of James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions. So for Penn State to pay this man $50 million to no longer be their head coach, I would assume they have a plan of where they go from here. Because you look at some of these candidates and the names that are being thrown around, they're not upgrades from James Franklin. They're just other guys who go 8-4, 9-3, and 10-2 at the best. So I guess the question is, if you fire a guy for constantly winning 9 to 10 games per season, what's the upgrade from there? Like, are there any names that stick out to you? Why? What is the upgrade from 10-2? Because the only logical answer would be a national championship. So what's an upgrade from James Franklin?
Well, I think it also probably was a cultural thing, right? Like, I'm not saying Franklin was a bad coach, but at some point, right, like when you're trying to get to the next level, you need some sort of, cultural change. So I think that's probably more what they're looking for, like rather than resume, because, it's going to be tough to beat James Franklin's resume. I think people have been throwing out Kurt Sinetti and Matt Rule. Kurt Cinetti, like I said, like we were talking about Indiana earlier, I think he's building something that's sustainable in Indiana, and so I don't see any world that he leaves the Hoosiers. Matt Rule, I think, is probably more likely, but still, not super likely. I think he's turning the page in Nebraska as we speak, and so it's hard for me to see him walking out on that. So I think then you probably turn to like defensive and offensive coordinators in the Big Ten. So like Brian Hartline, possibly. If you look at like Manny Diaz, their former defensive coordinator, now head coach at Duke. But even then, like he's 2 or maybe 3 years in at Duke now. And so, yeah, I don't really know where they go from here. There's some options, but I think all the good ones don't necessarily add up super well in my head.
Yeah, and normally in a situation like this, Alabama did just have, a coach opening, or if it was Oregon or Georgia or something like that, they're going to get the best of the best. Like when Alabama hired Kalen DeBoer, he was just coming off a national championship run. I think the idea of Matt Rule is interesting. He's a Penn State alum, and he was actually asked today about it, and the answer he gave made me think that he is interested in this job, and we're going to actually allow our listeners to take a listen here.
I love Penn State. Met my wife there. It's my alma mater. Fan since I was born. I think probably had a Penn State shirt when I was born. I love Pat Kraft. And really sad to see Coach Franklin go. When you think about what he did for my alma mater, the program was in peril, right? I mean, the players, people remember like the historic sanctions. You could transfer out, you could do whatever you want. Bill O'Brien comes in, stabilizes it for 2 years. James takes over a program in disarray and gives stability, excellence, and to see videos of people like yelling at his kids, and like I just don't understand why in our country now coaches are villains. Like, how hard I worked in Carolina and the things that were said to me, or how hard I work here and some of the things that are said, our coaches work.
So that's just a little clip. A lot of it was just giving credit to James Franklin, and I think when you go back and you watch that interview, if you were to watch the full thing, he never stands up in front of the mic and says, "I'm not taking the Penn State job." But with that being said, I think, obviously he's going to show interest in that because of the ties he has there. He went to school there. And I think also part of that was just him genuinely giving James Franklin kudos for the job he did. And I get what you're saying too, because, sometimes you just need something new. Sometimes you buy a new house and it needs renovations and it needs a new look. And in order to do that, you have to tear some things down. I think it was just time. I do think, at some point in the next year or two, James Franklin was going to get fired if things looked like this. But the only question I ask is just, what is an upgrade? Because the chances of being less than what Penn State has been the last 10 years is much higher than the chances of Penn State being better than what they've been the last 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. Like you're saying, sort of touch on what Matt Rule said there too, right? Like James Franklin did a good job. And so, like you're saying, it's going to be tough to upgrade for him. And I'm curious where they go from here. It'll be interesting. The spotlight's always on, the teams that are and the coaches that are struggling in comparison to their standard. And that's what was happening with Penn State and James Franklin. And so it'll be interesting how they move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And that is going to wrap up the college football portion of this episode. Like we talk about college football, kind of the primary content that you're going to get out of us in the fall season. We'll soon transition to college basketball and the NBA at some point, but for right now, you're going to get college football and NFL stuff because it's the fall. The leaves are red and yellow and orange, and it's a little bit cooler outside, and it's pretty great. But with that being said, we're going to transition into our third and final segment of the show. You know what time it is. Due to the week time.
Yes.
Essentially, we're tied 1-1. We gave you the nod last week with Cam Schlittler. The week before that, I had the Louisville ball boy. So you're the winner from last year, the reigning champ, last week. Who do you got? Who's your dude of the week?
I'm coming in with another baseball player. I got Jorge Polanco.
Dude.
Yes. In Game 5 of the ALDS, he hits a game-winning RBI. And then in Game 1 of the ALCS, another game-winning RBI. Not to mention today he goes yard once again. So Jorge Polanco has got the Mariners knocking on the door of a World Series berth for the first time ever. And so I think Jorge Polanco has to be my dude of the week.
You know, this is this is poor planning by the co-host. We should have discussed who our dudes of the week were going to be before the show because that was my dude. So
We can share it.
glad you got to go first. Yeah, let's say this. Unanimous dude of the week,
Jorge Polanco.
Jorge Polanco. Shout out Jorge. He's been making big plays for the Mariners. And it's fun to watch the Mariners be good. The Battle of Seattle the other night, 15 innings. That was fun stuff. So my dude of the week, I could go with a number of names. There's some really good performances in college football. My guy DeMond Williams went for 600 total yards. Elijah Surratt.
It's not even accurate.
It is accurate.
540.
Dude.
You're a nutso fan that exaggerates.
No, I'm not,
for
dude.
your team.
I'm not exaggerating.
See, when I talk about Oregon, I tell the truth. I speak the truth.
Dude, let me pull up his stat line right here.
I can tell you right now.
All right.
Let me guess. 402 in the air.
540. He
Yeah.
had about 200 more
You just
total
said
yards than
600.
Oregon's entire offense on
You
Saturday,
just said
bro.
600.
540, 600. Dude,
Yeah, that's not even. That doesn't even add up in the rounding world. Like that's not even how a number's round.
whatever, dude. All right. Anyway, because Hunter just pissed me off right there, my dude of the week's going to be Elijah Surratt, Indiana wide receiver. Dude went nuts.
See, that's just
8 receptions,
Bad.
121
Yeah.
yards, and
Whoa.
a touchdown. That essentially sealed the deal for the Hoosiers. This guy had a big day. Indiana, huge win on the road. This was really fun to watch. I think this Indiana team's legit, like we talked about. Oregon's going to be fine. Honorable mention, dude of the week, Dumpy, the Seattle Mariners mascot. For those that don't know, Dumpy is a salmon. And at every Mariners game, they do a salmon run where they have 4 or 5 people in salmon costumes and they race in the outfield. Dumpy hasn't won a race all season. He's 0 and whatever. Well, in the 15th inning, they brought out the salmon for a second salmon race of the night because the game was taking so long. And before the Mariners went up to bat in the bottom of the 15th, Dumpy got the win in his first win in the salmon run. This was big time. From what I heard, the crowd was going nuts. T-Mobile Park was just going insane. And then what happened on the ensuing at-bat for the Mariners? Jorge Polanco called game and sent the Seattle Mariners to the ALCS for the first time in 24 years. So shout out Dumpy, shout out Elijah Surratt, but the unanimous dude of the week from Chop It Up Sports is going to be Jorge Polanco. So that's going to wrap it up. I don't have anything. Do you have any closing statements?
no.
No. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Keep an eye out for short clips and snippets throughout the week. Those are going to be on TikTok and Instagram. We'll get you guys our college football predictions here most likely on Friday. And then after that, we'll break down week 8 of college football, and we'll hear more from you, or you will hear more from us here soon. So be sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment, share some advice, whatever you got, and we will talk to you guys very soon.